Hey guys, so I got asked a lot today about what I thought about Pestily's video that he put up about cheating and how it's a cheating pandemic. It is absolutely a problem. We all can agree that it's a problem. I did want to discuss a couple of key points in this that I think are absolutely important and worth discussing. And I know that there is some polarizing issues in here. I don't want to make it sound like I'm taking a hard line on anything because I'm not. But let's just talk about it, shall we? So right here, this is the beginning of a section of the video where Pest is talking about the reasonings as to why people cheat. And this section has to do with monetary gain.
And guys, this is what I wanted to try and say here, right here. Don't hate these people for doing it, because you've got to put it in this perspective, right? So a lot of these people that are cheating to make financial gain aren't coming from, like, you know, it's not Kevin down the shops, you know, that you meet in living in America or Australia and you know, they're making $100,000 a year. A lot of them are people from, say, people like from the Philippines or Indonesia. Like when I lived in Indonesia, I found out that the people in the area that I was living in, the minimum wage was 200 Australian dollars, which is like 160 US dollars a month. And then they could grind a game like Escape from Tarkov cheating through an organized company, obviously, and they'd sell it on a website. You know, they might make $20-30 a day. Now, when you put that into perspective, they're making $1,000 a month from cheating on a computer game to pay for, you know, their family and to support their family. You can't hate them for that. And any person out there that says they wouldn't do the same is a liar.
Okay, first, the idea that people living in the United States or Western countries making $100,000 a year, and that's normal, obviously, is not normal. People don't just make $100,000 a year. Somebody making six figures a year is doing really damn good for themselves. A household that makes six figures a year right now is doing really damn good for themselves. They are in the upper percentages of income, period. I understand what he means, though. See, I like economic stuff. I was a financial planner. So naturally, when it comes to discussions such as income, earnings, unemployment rates, that kind of stuff, it starts making me wonder. Now, in this case, I know that Pest is using Indonesia as a matter of example. If we take a look at a couple of things. In this case, we have the United States unemployment rate. In July of 2020, which is as far back as Moody's goes at this moment, Moody's reports that in July of 2020, the United States had an unemployment rate of 10.2% of the population. If we take a look at Indonesia, in August of 2020 was the highest unemployment rate that Indonesia has seen in 5 years at 7% at the height of the pandemic. Now, this has obviously since been going down. Depending on the place that you look and the analytics that you end up looking at, some of them say that the unemployment rate is 4%, some of them say 6%, but none of them say that the unemployment rate is nearly as high as it is in the United States. What this tells us is that people have jobs. Now, they may not be high-paying jobs, but there are jobs to be had. Pest then goes on to talk about how a single person living in Indonesia would end up earning a substantial living, $1,000 a month, let's say, in order to be able to afford their standard of living for themselves and potentially their family, $20 to $30 per day. Now, what's interesting about this is that if we look at an article that was written rather recently about living in Bali, it goes on to talk about how high-end expenses in Bali would end up topping about $2,000 to live on a generous budget with a moderate lifestyle, which means that if you had, let's say, a couple that was working both for the same company doing these types of cheats, they would be living a rather comfortable life. It also goes on to talk about how if you were a single person living in just a private guest house at somebody's property for all of the groceries and etc. that you would want, the basic cost of living for that, it would be $720 per month. Now, obviously, the minimum wage here doesn't work, but you're also not talking about somebody that's really scraping by either. And in the case of a couple, again, living in this type of a situation, this is no longer about surviving. This is about thriving. And in that case, it becomes a thought of thriving while knowing full well that you are becoming a problematic person for others. You are, in all essence, becoming financially successful at the expense of other people, plain and simple. This same article also goes on to say that those people in high-paying jobs make around $500 per month. Again, you are considered a high-wage earner if you make $500 a month. So if you make $1,000 a month, you're making serious cash. Second, and I think that this is the bigger takeaway, I don't know if the face of the person that is cheating for monetary gain is really somebody that's trying to support their family as much as, Pest is looking at arguing this point. There are plenty of people that are cheating for monetary gain that are doing it because it makes them good side cash. It's something that they can do for 2 or 3 hours at a clip. They make enough money for extra pizza and beer, and they move on. The thing is that even with the overhead, working for an organization, like Pest said, if somebody is making 6 to 7 times the minimum income of a certain area that is allowed in a place like Indonesia, for example, I don't think they're operating at the level of subsistence anymore. Meaning, yeah, they have a roof over their head, they have clothes on their back, and they're able to help out their family. But in this case, that rings more like gainful employment. It doesn't look like, in that case, at 6 to 7 times the income amount, livable. It's more like comfortable. Because let's be honest, in those situations, the person that is cheating for monetary gain is standing with an eyedropper full of poison at the river that feeds a tribe of people downstream. Now, one person with a small vial of poison probably isn't going to do much to hurt the water supply. But if you start putting hundreds or thousands of people at the river's source, obviously that causes some poisoning, and the people downriver stop drinking, meaning in this case, the game dies. If you want to see a perfect example of this, go look at Call of Duty Warzone. There's no one really playing it anymore. And if you want a perfect example of something that's already been thoroughly poisoned, all you have to do is go look at Titanfall, because that game is literally unplayable due to the amount of cheating going on in it. The second half here of what Pestily goes into is to talk about how if anyone else were in that position, they would end up doing the same thing, otherwise they're liars. Well, I can tell you from my own personal experience, that isn't true, because I'm living proof of it. And if I'm the only one, then so be it. But in my history, I had been so down on cash that I wasn't able to afford a place to live. And having a toddler, not knowing where the next $5 was going to come from, and foregoing food for myself in order to be able to make sure that my son ate, is not a comfortable position. There were options where I could have done something illegal or something at the expense of other people in order to be able to get a little further ahead. But I would not, and had refused all my life, and still refuse to this day, to do something like that. In fact, the reason why I'm a 40-year-old gamer right now, doing this for a living, is because I refused to do that kind of stuff, and because I grew up poor as hell, and I didn't have the kind of money that would afford me the ability to be able to do this. So, in a way, thank you guys. For all of the people that are out there that are doing this in order to be able to support their family because they have no other alternative, I think that percentage of people that are doing this for monetary gain is extremely small compared to the number of people that are just doing this for themselves because it's their best option to make easy money. I'm not telling anybody else how they should think, feel, or act. And perhaps to other people, this idea of cheating in video games is fine, and it's just something that you're willing to deal with. And I, of course, do not want anyone starving as the result of not being able to have any other alternatives. But to me, if it's going to come at the expense of other people, no matter how small, it should be an absolute last resort. But that's just me.
But hang on a minute. He can pay $20 and get himself 40 million rubles. Look at that. All of a sudden, he's just saved himself hours and hours and hours of farming where he could have just, and he just worked for an hour. And then
So this I also necessarily don't agree with. Yeah, of course, people don't want to be inconvenienced, and buying money like this is something that is easy if they have the disposable income to be able to purchase it. But again, it becomes a vicious cycle. And no one wants to, I guess, deal with having to farm 40 million rubles or whatever, and they spend the money. I'm not trying to tell anybody what to do with their cash. But again, this all circles back around to this comes at the expense of other people. By feeding into the machine ends up feeding back. It's really the cheat developers that are the problem. The issue here, again, is if you go after the cheat developers by living in a universe where it's possible to be able to get rid of all online cheats, which I do not think is ever going to be possible. Well, let's just say for the sake of argument, that's something that you could possibly do. If you were able to knock out those cheat developers, you are then removing the ability for those people that are using these cheat systems to have a workable, livable wage and feed their families. So if you're going to be empathetic toward the people that are farming this stuff for a living, then you also must be empathetic to the people that are developing the cheats in order to be able to employ them. And then again, you must also be empathetic toward the people that are buying the stuff in order to be able to keep the business in business in order to be able to employ others. I do not want a video like this being blowback on hate on Pest or hate on me. I'm not trying to pass judgment on anyone. Maybe I'm moral high grounding here. I don't know. I just look at it like from the perspective of where I've sat and am sitting now. I would not even then resort to trying to knowingly take advantage of other people in order to be able to get ahead just so that I could get mine. And if it came down to that very last resort, I would feel awful about myself to begin with. And secondly, I would do it for the shortest amount of time that I possibly could while desperately trying to find something to do that didn't come at the expense of other people. I, of course, in no way want anyone to suffer mentally or physically as a result of them being cold or hungry or anything like that. But I'm having a hard time believing that the choice between cheating and not cheating for monetary gain is homelessness. If that's the rubric by which someone decides that they're going to cheat in the game, I can't see a large percentage of the people doing it being that. I'm sure there are some, but for me, it becomes one of those things where if it's too good, why bother changing it? To me, it looks like they are doing it so that they can give themselves something of a comfortable life. And everybody should be able to pursue that comfortable life. I just don't think it needs to come at the expense of other people. So I have a hard time empathizing, especially when the same, level of cheating, the same problem, the same intensity of the problem is also being ran by Johnny in his dorm room so that he can afford to get pizza and beer that week by cheating for 3 hours and selling some stuff on eBay. I absolutely love Pest, and I think he's a great guy. But I think at Pest's attempt that he's making here to sound or be humanistic and appeal to the humanist nature in people, it ignores the overarching issue of the lack of humanism that funds the entire enterprise.